States. I want to go to London now. We have a guest, Jack Valero. He is the Catholic Voices founder, joining us again from London. Jack, good to have you here on the program. I want to ask you, do you think that Pope Francis, when he was chosen to become the Pope back in 2013, and now if you look back at these 12 years of being the actual Pope, do you think it's the same kind of legacy that we remember now as people thought that he was going to deliver when he was chosen to become the new Pope?
Well, I think that from the very beginning, he displayed a style that he has kept up. On the first day, he told us that he had read a book on God's mercy. And I think one of these main messages of his pontificate was that God loves you, whatever you have done, whoever you are, whatever you believe, and that is the most important thing you can know about yourself, about God, about the world, and that rules and commandments and so on don't make sense unless you understand that God is close to you. And he said that he said that from the very beginning, and he has kept saying it. Now he has been close to people throughout his pontificate. We have been seeing images of him embracing a disabled child or kissing the feet of leaders who didn't want to make peace, but also kissing the feet of prisoners. And he was close to people who suffered, the sick, prisoners, the illegal migrants, the how often. I mean, his first trip was to Lampedusa in order to show that he cared for the people who were coming in boats, and warning us against the Mediterranean becoming a big cemetery, and really bringing the European leaders to think about this in terms of names and families rather than in terms of numbers. So he was showing these things from the beginning. He didn't like the big cars, and he chose a small car, and he has kept a small car throughout his pontificate. He didn't like pomp and circumstance. He has kept a very sober style throughout. So I think if you look at his first week or 2 weeks, basically his pontificate has spread those ideas, or he has been using those ideas throughout what we saw from the beginning, and his total dedication. Right up to yesterday when he came to give the blessing, he couldn't read the speech, the address, so he asked somebody to do it. But then he actually got into the Pope Mobile and went around the square greeting people. So he wanted to be close to people, even though we didn't know then that it was his last few hours on earth, right up to the end, dedicated to others.
Mr. Valero, I want to mention something here from the statement from Cardinal Kevin Farrell this morning. In the statement announcing his death, Cardinal Farrell says his entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and his church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and most marginalized. Do you feel that this is sort of his lasting legacy, what he leaves behind him, the sort of desire to reach out to the poorest and most marginalized?
I think this is a very big part of his legacy, obviously, but the church is for the people, is to bring people to God, and people are alienated, they are suffering, and they are worried about other things. And so he wanted to show, as I said, that the love of God comes before all else. And so whether you are marginalized or discriminated against because you are gay or trans or poor or not or unimportant, the Pope showed you that you were important, to God, that you were important to him, and that changed the optic. He was obviously a believer of all the principles of Catholic doctrine, like the previous popes before him, but he gave a different um, outlook to these things by focusing on how they 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 affected people. And I think one of the things he will be remembered by also was that very famous day, the 27th of March 2020, when a third of the world went into lockdown because of COVID, and he stood there in St. Peter's Square on his own and telling us of talking to us about the suffering of Christ, about the importance of suffering together and helping one another, and and being the kind of parish priest of the world, and that showed again how close he was to people who were suffering, who were locked up in their houses, and some were dying, and he was there for them. So I think you're right. He will be remembered for this, and there were some very striking images of his pontificate to show it.
I also understand that in April of last year, Pope Francis actually approved an updated edition of the liturgical book for papal funeral rites. Basically, he wanted a simpler funeral with a more focus on the church, on expressing faith in the church. Archbishop Ravelli says that this renewed rite seeks to emphasize even more that the funeral of the Roman pontiff is that of a pastor and disciple of Christ and not of a powerful person of this world. What do you expect now to happen during this funeral that will be different from previous funerals of popes?
Yes, I think you're right, and of course, the Pope, take John Paul II, he wanted to be buried in a very simple coffin, and he was, but obviously he had been Pope for 27 years, and he had changed, he had done many things in the church and in the world, and very many people came, many leaders from the world came to his funeral in 2005, and it was a big thing, and he was a very important person. Well, Pope Francis saw that and said, well, whatever happens, I want a very simple funeral. And so he actually changed the rules in advance. And he also wanted to be buried in the church of St. Mary Major, the Basilica of St. Mary Major, which is a church he loves very much because it's dedicated to Mary, the Mother of Christ. And he had great devotion to Mary. And every time he went on a trip, before leaving, he would go to this church to pray, and after coming back, he would come back and pray at that church. And so it was his favorite Roman church. And so he decided that he would be buried there. He asked to be buried there, and so I expect that the funeral rites will be much simpler. And that he will be buried there in St. Mary Major, and that it will be as he lived. He knew he had power because he was the Pope, but he wasn't interested in that power. He was interested in the people. And that's what he wants to show also now in death.
Jack Valero, the founder of Catholic Voices, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on this difficult morning on the passing of the Pope.